Welcome to the Slide Getting Tech Simplified channel. And today I got Harsha with me. She's going to share her amazing story, how she got started and how she's continuing to thrive within the technology field. So Harsha, will you please bless my audience with your amazing story?
First off, thank you so much, Sly, for having me on this amazing series that you drive. And the thing that I love the most about this series is the reason behind it, your daughter. And I just absolutely like it because I have two daughters myself, and I think we owe it to them to be able to share such stories and tell them about how the workplace is and how we can actually shape the future. Now, with that, coming to my story and my journey, I actually started in India, did my undergraduate degree in computer science from Karnataka University, Gopte Institute of Technology. And then after that, I worked for Wipro Infotech back in India. And then I came to the US to do my master's in computer science from the University of Central Florida. Right out of college, during recruiting events, was where I was actually picked up by Microsoft. And, I've been with Microsoft for about over 2 decades now. I did do a short stint at a startup during the days of the startup. However, I've been in different roles within Microsoft, both in support and services, as well as on the field side of the house, which is basically SMSMP, which is the small and mid-sized partner segment. And then, of course, have been working with the global partner solutions for over 6-7 years now in multiple capacities. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a really cool story. So how did you know IT was for you? Like, I know you said you started off in computer science, did that in undergraduate, you got your master's in computer science, but before you got there, how did you know that you were going to go into computer science and technology was an area that you wanted to learn more about?
So it's actually, I owe it to my maternal uncle, my mama, and he bought me a computer, a PC XT, when I was in 6th, 7th grade, I believe. And, we used to play these, me and my brother, we used to play all these little games on it. And those were the days of DOS, right? And so I still loved playing those games, but we took a course in the summer and, we just tried out like basic commands and all that. And I just was so mesmerized at the way in which it just listened to what you did, right? I mean, you could actually make a machine do whatever you told it to do. And I just was very mesmerized by it. And that's when I remember telling my mom and dad, I was like, I love this. I really want to learn how to do this. And, and that's basically the start of my journey. And it's interesting because, I feel like that exactly goes back to the point of the younger you are and when you're introduced to technology, the more you are likely to pursue it. It was just so enigmatic to me that I was like, this is something that I really want to do. And I really didn't even think too much about other things because I loved it so much. So yeah, it's truly my mama who actually, encouraged me to get into computer science.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very similar to me. When I grew up, my parents, migrated from Barbados. And I remember somehow, I don't know how the computer got there, but I got a computer around like 6, 7 years old, and no one knew how to use it, right? So I set it up, right? I figured out how to put it together. They had the manual there, and I know I got it to work. And at that time, my computer didn't, I don't know what, all it did is play Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, and it was in green and black. So I don't know what it was, right? I don't even know what type of computer it was that, like, from my memory now. But I just remember being so excited that I can go in this virtual world, and it was cool, getting to do certain things, commands. And then I got a gateway computer. Someone donated it to us. The old computers with a little cow on it. I think it was a similar symbol or something like. And I remember it's Windows 95. It's loading up for the first time, and I would spend hours and hours and hours and just playing with it, figuring out, using, I think, Word Perfect at the time and writing things and, just figuring out what does the commands do. I broke it a couple of times, man. I made it get the blue screen, and I figured out how to fix it by going to like the encyclopedia and then learning it, right? And I was just so mesmerized. But for me, no one in my family, well, I think my brother was a little bit in tech, but I didn't know that, and I didn't put two and two together. So when I went to college, I ended up starting off as an English major, and then I ended up switching into business, and then I happened in my business school at University of Buffalo, I had to take a tech class, and I got a perfect score on it, right? And when I got a perfect score on it, the teacher's like, "Man, but you sure don't want to do tech?" I'm like, "I didn't know you could do this as a career, right?" And then from there, it was history. So it's very similar. Like I got exposed to it early. My parents didn't know the value of it because they kept telling me, I remember, you need to focus on other things because, you won't be able to work with it, right? But they didn't see what I saw. I'm like, well, I remember I told my mom when I got older, I'm like, and my dad, I'm like, I think this is going to be the future, not knowing how true that was or not. It wasn't like I didn't read any scientific studies or anything. I just could tell, right? And then I've been a fan since, right? And now from Windows 95, I'm at Microsoft too. So to me, it's like almost kind of like, a geek finally finds his home, right? I came over here to Microsoft now, so it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, and it's so like that resonates so much with me also, right? Because I feel like in the first year of engineering, we had to take like courses from every single subject, right? So we have to do like mechanical engineering and electrical engineering and electronics and all that, and then we had like one course around data structures and computer science. And I remember, every time we had that class, I would just love it. Like I would just, for some reason it used to come very easily for me, and then I'd be like, okay, this is what I want to do. And it was funny because when we went for engineering, when I started my courses, my grandmother used to say, she'd be like, oh, I think you should just do computer science, because if you do mechanical, then you'll have to do like a lot of manual work. And in computer science, you get to sit in an AC room. Like that was what she told me once.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good idea, because I could just sit in an AC room and code away versus having to use the lathes and all that for mechanical engineering students had to do. And so it was interesting, the mindset that I had at that time, which was it's cooler to sit in a computer room in an AC room and code. So yeah, I think that also helped a lot, is getting encouragement from the family and then seeing how we could work on magic.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty cool, right? Again, those little nudges, I like to call them, helps you kind of find where you want to be, at least give you some idea on what you don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of echoes for me. Like, I like IT because I get to set my own time and hours, right? I'm a creative at heart, So for me, I like to be able to start when I want to start. I want to be able to work on a project I like to work on, right? And in tech, that gave me that flexibility. And then for me, I was the opposite. Computer science, I took the class, absolutely was terrible. Terrible. Like, again, I'm a creative, right? So I got ideas bouncing off like 100 times a day, right? But then that's not good when you write in code, right? So, because I'm like, man, where did I leave off on my code, right? I got to check the code, and it kept erroring. Like, where did I put the comments? I forgot to put the comments in. Oh, man. So for me, I passed it, but it gave me so much grief. I'm like, man, if this is what IT is, man, I don't know if I'm going to be that good at it. And then I took my telecommunications course. Read that book back and front. I can tell you right now, I read my books, but I never read it as fast, right? Read it twice. I ended up getting like an old Cisco switch. Started playing with a switch. I got a forensics. One of my teachers, David Murty, had a Saleman lab in the University of Buffalo where I was able to do like a work study program. Get to like remote in and work on the computers, and I found my niche, right? I was like, all right, I could do this. This is fun. And then, again, I had the gift to gab. And, when I was younger, they used to joke and say, Sly, you should be a lawyer because you could talk. But I took my first law class. I knew that wasn't for me. But then I saw a niche. A lot of my tech people didn't like to speak, right? They didn't really understand the business benefits of it. And I can break that down pretty quickly. Then my salespeople didn't want to get technical. So I'm like, all right, this is my lane, right? And that's kind of been my lane here. But my grandma told me, like, hey, you got the gift to gab. And my brother kind of like, well, you seem like you spend a lot of time on computers. Maybe you should do that. And those, and then for me, I like to work backwards, right? So I'm like, man, they pay a lot more. I can help my family out a little bit more. let me do that. So it's very similar. I guess another question I would ask you, right? So for the people maybe transitioning into tech, who maybe that's not their first love like ours, right? Or someone coming up new into the field and they haven't decided yet. What advice would you give yourself in the beginning, or someone who's making that transition into tech maybe later on in their career?
Yeah, I love this question, right? I think there are so many ways in which people can get into tech. I think the traditional route is the route that I took, right? I got my graduate degree, undergraduate degree, everything in tech and all that. However, as the cloud has, advanced, and as, the adoption of computer and digital is being advanced, we are seeing more and more that the people who arrive in tech don't really take the traditional routes, right? Like if you look at the data scientists, for example, they actually started off as, probably somewhere in the insurance industry, the banking industry, healthcare industry, any other industry. But what they did was they had been doing probably number crunching, they'd been doing statistical analysis, business analysis, etc. And then they were probably using, tools that were available. However, as technology, advanced, they noticed that to make it easier for them to solve the problems that they were using, they started applying technology to it. So most of the data scientists that we see these days have a very strong industry domain knowledge. And so what I feel is that, there are so many ways you arrive at tech. It's the same thing with product managers, marketing managers, sales folks, right? And they all have arrived into tech doing what with what they love and what they are very good at doing, right? And so I think we need to start changing our mindsets that, tech is only like sitting there and coding or sitting behind a computer. Tech is so much more creative, and it's so much more than just being like, sitting behind a computer and writing code. And I think that's the thing, that I love, right? Like when I talk to my daughters, or when I talk to any of my nephews or nieces or my friends, I always tell them the same thing, is that, pick your passion, even if it is philosophy, even if it is political science, or if it is psychology, just do like the best job at it, because you are going to meet technology on the way, and you are going to have to do it, right? And it's, it's your generation, especially like the latest generation that is there, like for them, tech comes so easily, and so they'll just be able to apply it. And so my advice is follow your passion. Just know that technology is an enabler. It's going to help you solve the problems that you're trying to solve in the fields that you're passionate about. And so don't be of the mindset that technical means just coding, right?
Yeah.
That coding is a big part of it, but there's all these other aspects to it. And so, just embrace it.
That was well said. Bravo. I like to just say that's great, man. If you follow your passion, that what keeps someone like myself learning, constantly learning, is because it's something I just love to do, right? So I just echo that. I mean, you follow your passion and use technology as a tool. That's what it's there for, to help solve problems creatively. And I think that's what I like to. I'm glad that you brought that up, because all the ladies that came on this interview series, right? They were in tech, but in multiple different fields and different facets, and it looks different. Some of them was in marketing, some of them was in sales, some of them owned their own businesses, some of them were in engineering like yourself, directors, right? Completely different days, right? And how they look like. So if you're on the fence and if you're not sure, right, just follow your passion and see how technology helps you be more efficient or better, or solve a problem that you're working on. So that was excellently said. So this kind of brings me into my next question is, Harsha, what drives you? What fuels your fire, your passion? What makes you get up in the morning and take charge of the day, and what really excites you?
I love what I do, Sly. I mean, I'm very happy that I can say that. I just love working with partners and seeing them solve problems that help the world, right? I mean, let's just take the last year. My organization, we work with partners who help with state, local government education, as well as health and life sciences. And so most of the partners that we work with are helping, over the last year, they helped with solutions coming from, vaccine management to vaccine, COVID tracking to contact tracing to, how do we get these sports teams and professional sports teams back into, playing sports, and what are the long-term effects of these? How do we, enable remote works and, virtual healthcare and virtual visits, and, the unemployment checks, the stimulus checks, the, childcare, child welfare support during the COVID. How do we, vaccine management, vaccine distribution, like every single aspect, we had partners that were building solutions and transforming the ecosystem and really serving our communities, right? And when I think about it, we spend way too much time at our work. And our amazing CEO, Satya, when he became the CEO, he told us this. He said, we spend 1/3 our lives at work. And so if each of you, like each of us, we have to go back and try and tie what we do on a day-to-day basis and tie that back to our passion. And if we can't draw that line, then we are in the wrong job, right? And I think that's when it really hit me, is like, okay, I love serving and helping solve difficult problems. I love mentoring. I love it when I make other people look good. And then the biggest one that I feel like that excites me is that we are at a point where, it's a transformation that's going on in like corporate America, right? I mean, I feel like people are talking about the difficult topics. People are saying, let's bring our whole selves to work. Let's be inclusive. Let's create a diverse workforce. And having lived through like the last 20 years, as amazing as it has been, we've gone through our own share of like, I would say like discrepancies, like, things that would not have, shouldn't have been that way, but we had kind of taken it as like for granted, as like, oh yeah, that's just how things are, versus now the new generation is questioning these things. And I feel like, that excites me, is, I have the opportunity to be a part of that change that we need to drive very much, and leave the workplace a better place for our own children and the next generations that follow. And so those are the three things, right? Just helping with the transformation, serving our community, helping mentor and grow and make others look good, and then, the social causes. So those are the three things that I think excite me the most.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I guess right now, let's switch gears. Let's say, can you share some of your favorite books, podcasts?
Yeah, of course. So I think every woman would be remiss if they don't have Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg in one of their favorite authors and books. So of course I've read that, and I really truly believe in that book. The one that, my favorite books is this book called The Daughter from a Wishing Tree. These are unusual tales by women in mythology. And this book was written by Sudha Murty. And she also is actually my source of inspiration. And it really goes back to a lot of the childhood stories and that my parents and my grandparents used to tell about, women in mythology. And it helps me reflect back on some of the female role models that I grew up looking at, right? And so that was a really good book. I also loved reading Brené Brown's Dare to Lead. I've been reading Mindset right now, which is really another really good book. I've also looked at Women of Color in Tech. There's a really good book on that. Blindspot is a really good book. How to Listen and How to Be Heard. That's a really good book. And then Brave, Not Perfect. Those are my favorite books. In terms of podcasts, I really am not too big into listening to podcasts, but I do listen to my daughter's podcast, which is called Inspire Her. It's on Spotify. And so that's been like a podcast that I definitely listen to.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing those gems, and make sure you go out there and read those. And I know I'm going to take a few of them and listen to and read when I get a chance also. So before we wrap it up, I have one more question and I couldn't leave it off. Like, what type of obstacles did you have to overcome to get to where you are right now? Because I feel like sometimes with these Women in Tech series, we focus on getting into tech, but women do that already. You do that wonderfully, right? But how do you get in and make a difference and change and be a trailblazer like yourself? What are some of the things that you had to overcome to get there and to do that?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, I think if I just look at my story, right? I mean, I've been an immigrant woman of color within the tech industry over the past decades, right? And I feel like I've had my share of things. For example, Y2K, when that was early on in my career, and a lot of outsourcing used to happen at that time to help with the Y2K bug. And I remember people used to say like, "Oh, you guys are taking my job, like you guys are taking our jobs," or stuff like that, right? As an immigrant, it used to, I really did not know how to react to such comments. For example, sometimes trying to fit in, right? I mean, especially when you are in the sales and business development area. A lot of times I used to find myself researching like sports teams and wines. Being a teetotaler, I really did not know much about it, and in early days I used to feel very uncomfortable when there would be topics about like sports and stuff like that. And so I'd really instead of in the evening going back and taking rest, I'd go and research all these sports teams and like statistics, so that I could be there in those meetings and be able to like contribute to those meetings. As a mother, I feel like I took a call during labor. I still beat myself up for that. I tell every girl, like, no, like that is the most important moment in your life, like do not, but like, hey, you have all these stereotypes that external pressures, like fear of feeling like oh my gosh, what if they think that I'm slacking, or what if they think that as a mother you maybe make your work your second priority. Like sometimes in meetings with like CEOs, etc. First you probably wouldn't be invited, and then sometimes I've elbowed my way in, and then I've had people to tell some early on tell me, you can attend, I'll invite you, but can you please not talk too much. Stuff like that you have to go through. It's gotten so much better these days. Like I feel like a lot of the trailblazers who have been in these positions before are now opening the windows for like and doors for everybody to be able to be at the table and contribute and bring their whole selves to work and be comfortable in their own skins, right? And I feel like those are the things that we need to be doing better, is telling our stories and telling about our own lived experiences, so that way a lot of times these are not intentional, these are all unconscious biases, right? And so if we tell our stories, and if somebody who I know hears this story, and somebody who's my ally will always make sure they step in and take care of it, right? And so anyway, I think that's the key, is there's a lot of obstacles that people face. Again, it's like intersectionality in the workplace, right? I mean, when you belong to like multiple different groups, then it becomes the feeling of belonging becomes more and more important. And so there is equity, and then there is equality, right? And so how do we empower different groups and different communities, not just women, right, to bring equity, but also to bring equality through empowerment. I think that's what we need to strive towards.
Wow, that was beautiful. I don't have anything to add on that, right? You just said it so eloquently, and I definitely agree with that. And then I'm glad that you shared that, because I know, and that thing that will help someone else that's listening to this podcast. So I really do appreciate that. So before we end today's call, how can the audience get in contact with you?
Through LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so look me up on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to answer questions or connect with anyone.
Well, fantastic. This was a great conversation. I'm going to make sure to put those books and all those tips you gave inside the show notes, inside the description on YouTube. And I also will put it in the description in your podcast, because you will be able to listen to this as well as watch this when it comes out. So until next time, Sly Gittins and Harsha are out. Peace.
Thank you.